So how do you pull off maybe the greatest political magic trick in history? How do you take a 500-year-old republic, turn it into an empire, and convince everyone you're actually saving it? Today, we're diving into the brilliant, subtle, and absolutely masterful power grab by the man who became Augustus.
And that's the whole puzzle, isn't it? This is exactly where his great-uncle, the military genius Julius Caesar, failed. I mean, spectacularly. Caesar was obvious, he acted like a king, and it got him a toga full of daggers. Augustus? Well, he learned from that. He played a much smarter game.
To really get what Augustus pulled off, you have to picture the Rome he inherited. It was an absolute mess. We're talking 100 years of brutal, non-stop civil war. The whole society was exhausted. Caesar's murder didn't solve anything. It just threw Rome right back into the fire. So for his young heir, Octavian, the question was, how do you get all the power without anyone realizing you're taking it?
Okay, so let's get into his first move, and honestly, it is pure genius. He's just a teenager, 18 years old, and he inherits Caesar's name and his massive fortune. But here's the key. He didn't see it as just wealth. He saw it as a weapon.
While all the seasoned politicians were telling him to wait, to be cautious, Octavian knew he had to move fast. He understood that the name Caesar was pure political gold. And to make that name real, he had to deliver on Caesar's promises, like right now. So he stops being just Gaius Octavius. He becomes Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. The man understood branding. I mean, think about the sheer audacity of this for a second. He doesn't even have all the cash on hand. So he goes into debt to pay out the inheritance Caesar left for the Roman people. And with that one move, he instantly buys himself two things every ruler needs. First, a massive loyal fan base among the public. And second, the undying loyalty of Caesar's veteran soldiers. Boom, just like that, he has his own private army. All right, so he's got the people, he's got the army. What's next? You take out the competition. His last major rival was the famous general Mark Antony. And the war between them wasn't just about who would rule Rome. It was about to give Octavian a source of power that was completely unrivaled. The war itself was quick and decisive. And here's where he was so clever. He didn't frame it as Roman against Roman. No way. He spun it as a patriotic war, a war against the foreign queen Cleopatra. This totally united Rome behind him. The big naval victory at Actium was the nail in the coffin. And by 30 BC, Egypt belonged to him.
But winning the war was one thing. The real prize, the ultimate jackpot, was Egypt itself. This wasn't just another province. Its incredible wealth, the entire treasury of the Egyptian kings, became Octavian's personal property. It's like he suddenly had his own private central bank that was richer than the actual Roman government.
So what do you do with a mountain of cash like that? You solve the single biggest problem that had been tearing Rome apart for 100 years. What to do with all the soldiers when a war ends? He personally paid to buy land for over 100,000 of his veterans. Their loyalty now wasn't to the state, it was to him and him alone.
So let's recap. He's got the money, he's got the army, he's the last man standing. Everyone expects him to declare himself king, right? Wrong. He walks into the Senate and does the exact opposite. He puts on this incredible public performance of giving all his power away.
This is just political theater at its absolute finest. He offers to return to being a private citizen, just knowing that everyone is terrified of another civil war. So of course, they beg him to stay. He then reluctantly agrees to take command of the most important provinces, the ones with all the soldiers. He wasn't a conqueror, he was a humble servant of the state. It was a masterstroke.
And this is so important. He knew that titles like king or dictator were poison in Rome. That's what got Caesar killed. So he picks this harmless-sounding title, princeps, first citizen. It allowed the senators and the old families to save face, to pretend that the republic they loved was still alive and well.
But you'd think that would be it, right? Game over. But Augustus was a perfectionist. He realized his new system wasn't quite perfect yet. So, 4 years later, he came back to pull off his final constitutional masterpiece, perfecting the art of having all the power without any of the official titles.
See, for years he'd been holding the consulship, the top job, but this was blocking other ambitious senators from getting to the top. So he resigns. And what happens? Total panic in the streets. The people think their savior is abandoning them. You see the pattern here, right?
He creates a crisis that only he can solve.
And Fix is it's mind-bendingly clever. He realized he didn't need the job titles, he just needed the powers that came with them. So the Senate, under pressure from the people, lets him keep the powers while other senators can have the fancy but now empty titles. He basically said, you guys can have the offices, I'll just take the authority.
So first up, they grant him tribunicia potestas, the power of the tribune, for life. This is huge. It means he can propose laws, veto any law he doesn't like, and, get this, his body is now legally sacred. To harm him was a crime against the gods and the Roman people. He was literally untouchable.
And then came the knockout blow. They gave him Imperium Proconsulare Maius, or Greater Proconsular Power. That's a mouthful, but it boils down to one simple thing. He was now the supreme commander of all of Rome's armies, everywhere, all the time. No other general could ever challenge him again. It was game over. So, when the dust finally settles from all of these subtle, brilliant moves, what has he actually built? What did Rome look like now?
He created what we call the Principate, and it was the perfect illusion. On the surface, if you squinted, it looked just like the old Republic. The Senate still met, elections for consuls still happened, but it was all a show. Behind the curtain, all the real power, the money, the laws, the army, was in the hands of one man. He had wrapped an empire in the robes of a republic.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Augustus himself basically spelled it out in his own biography. He said his power wasn't about any one office. It was about his auctoritas, his influence, his prestige, the immense weight of his authority that he'd built up over decades.
Which really brings us to the core question. For the average person living in Rome at the time, was this a conscious trade? Did they even realize their republic was gone? Or were they just so relieved that the wars were over, that food was cheap, and that things were finally stable after a century of chaos? For most people, peace was a much bigger deal than politics.
And that's the ultimate legacy of Augustus's masterclass in power. He gave Rome the Pax Romana, 200 years of peace and prosperity. But the price was the very thing that had defined Rome for centuries, its political freedom. It's the ultimate trade-off, isn't it? Security for liberty? It was the question Rome faced then, and it's a question that, in many ways, we're still asking today.